Welcome. I'm Rafael Gomez, professor at the University of Toronto, host of Speaking Freely here on TLN, and now a interviewer of a mayoral candidate for the City of Toronto, whose election will come in June 2023. We're actually here at TLN Studios in Columbus Centre, North York, Toronto, and I've asked Anthony to come in to find out why he's running. And also, what are the premises, what are the platform items that you think Torontonians need, and by extension, other cities might learn from. So, Anthony, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity, Rafael. Great to be here.
Yeah,
great to be here on TLN.
Excellent. Now, full disclosure, Anthony asked me several weeks ago before he announced his campaign if I would appear as an advisor on his
Smart guy.
On his team. And in part because a few years ago I wrote a book called Small Business in the City, in which I charted the importance of independent small business locally rooted in our neighborhoods and how that adds to the vitality, not just to the economic development, but the vitality of our city. You read it. You thought I could bring some of those ideas to your campaign. I'm very honored. Also being a labor relations professor, I can give you some advice on the side there too. But full disclosure, happy to be on your campaign, but also here to ask you a few hopefully hard-hitting questions.
All right, let's do it.
All right. First off, probably the most controversial one, and it was your first item, was this idea of reviewing everything the City of Toronto does. Now, we should remember, the City of Toronto is the largest city in Canada. Our capital is in Ottawa, but our economic and social capital, if you will, is here. It's billions of dollars that our city manages, which is greater than even many of our provinces. Putting that under the microscope it seems like a sensible idea, but it's also a daunting one. So if I was to sort of push back, not the normal criticisms of you can't do that sort of thing, it's can you do it? Is it a logistical possibility to do the kind of thing you're asking? Look at everything the city does, prioritize it, and then reestablish what you think is the most pertinent thing to be spending money on.
Well, first of all, that ties into why I'm running for mayor initially. Father of 3 small kids, grown up here, spent so much time in this city. I love this city, and it's kind of upsetting to hear so many people talk about how the city feels like it's in decline. A lot of young families talking about moving out of Toronto. A lot of seniors telling me they used to go downtown for lunches to put on a show and stuff, to see a show, not doing it anymore. So I feel like the status quo voices who got us to this place where the city is dealing with these issues are not the people to get us out of it. And I feel like we need a fresh perspective. And I've been in the newspaper business, broadcaster for 15 years. I've been talking from the sidelines. Finally time to enter the arena and offer my ideas as a fresh voice. And one of my campaign promises that I've announced so far, and there's going to be a lot more big, bold ideas that'll get people talking, I promise you, is a 90-day review of all city services to ask, are the things the city's getting up to, all of its activities, are they laser focused on providing the services that taxpayers pay for and that residents rely on? And if they're not, well, bye-bye. Maybe we have to get rid of them. And some people have said, how are you going to be able to do this? There's so much going on in the city. That's the hard work, and that's what people expect, to go and just look at everything. And I think a lot of the councillors that have been around a long time, they've let a lot of this stuff just go on, and they haven't really assessed, why are we doing these things? Let's focus on the core services people want.
Can I just push back on one idea? How will you know what's of most benefit to local residents, to small businesses? What will be the process of getting that information so that when you're doing this review, I agree. I think anything is possible, especially what you're doing and spending billions of dollars on is, of course, the first thing that you would look at. But how do you know that it's a priority list that actually is reflective of what ordinary citizens want and need?
It's a really important question, and I got to tell you, some of the ones I've found, and we're going to be talking about these in the weeks to come, I don't think anybody's going to disagree. I mean, we're all reasonable people here. There's some things we're funding that we're like, wow, my tax dollars are going to that. No, thank you. Let's be done with that. The rest of it, we certainly need to have a conversation. But when we're talking about problems with law and order, a lot of concerns about public safety, a lot of concerns about, are the roads being properly repaired, other issues around public transportation, and people they want the streets to be clean. They want the garbage to be collected. Things are slipping. Drill down and focus on that. That's the signals that people have sent there. And then there's the stuff in the middle where we got to have a conversation. You know, is it a need to have or is it a nice to have list? And if it's a nice to have, I don't know, maybe people don't want their taxes going up to pay for it. Maybe they more want to talk about the efficiencies, which the other guys are afraid of doing, but I'm willing to confront those challenges.
Right. The challenge will be right there, but I think even then it would be very stark. Improve your local park or fund a climate change active summit trip to Geneva, which by definition defies the whole climate change agenda by flying people over. So I can see where you're going. So I think that's great, listening to the people and then iterating back and figuring out what's the priority list for our city, right? The other area I want to, you touched on it, crime, and sort of disorder on the streets. This general level of feeling that the city and our daily interactions with it has changed these last 3 years. Clearly, it has. We've gone through a very tumultuous time. But what are you saying there? What has made your solution to this major problem? And there's lots of causes of crime and disorder, but you focused on one. Can you tell the public what that is and why you've chosen it?
Yeah, thank you. Now, you're going to have some people running for mayor who are saying, defund the police. No, I'm sorry. We don't need to defund the police. I mean, we have an issue with public safety right now. We need to invest in our officers, and we need to back them up and respect them for all the work they're doing out there, going out into the streets every day. But a real issue that's going on, when we talk about random attacks on the streets of Toronto, the violence we're seeing, one thing that hasn't been discussed as much as it should be, and people are telling me this, police are telling me this, medical experts are telling me this, a lot of these people doing the attacks, drug addiction, drug crisis, opioid crisis. And we need to have a conversation about this, and I want to focus on treatment. Other cities are doing this, Rafael. Right. Other jurisdictions, they have treatment programs to get these folks off of drugs. And I believe we help our brothers and sisters on the street. We help make our communities safer. We get the people off the drugs. They stop doing the attacks, and a compassionate society doesn't keep people on drugs. It gets them off of it. The police are telling me they're done arresting these people. They don't want to just be locking them up and throwing them in the car. They want these people to get help. And Torontonians are a lot of communities, very passionate, compassionate people. They want to see this happen.
Yeah. And how do you circle that back, though? These people have to be treated somewhere.
Yes.
And of course, that raises the whole issue of not in my backyard, in yours. That's fine. Where would you structure these treatment facilities? Give us an example, like of a what if. If Anthony Furey becomes mayor, he's going to focus on treatment. Give us an example of what that looks like. Yeah,
well, generally, by and large, the people who are most affected by the drug crisis are in some of the same downtown neighborhoods. We're talking Moss Park, we're talking Trinity Bellwoods, and there are actually facilities not too far from there that you can move more towards treatment, convert more towards treatment, create spaces where they can find community that is a meaningful social connection outside of their drug addiction. So there's a lot of tools already there that we just need to retool. And I think it's about coming together and working together as a community to say, we want to focus on treatment because it's been missing from the conversation. I think we can get there in fewer steps than people may think.
Absolutely. And just sort of turn towards now maybe back to a bigger agenda item, which is the kind of effects and after effects of the pandemic. And I don't like using that euphemism. You probably know this too. And it was the pandemic didn't do anything. The virus didn't do anything. It was our response to it that did. When we closed small business but kept the Walmarts open, that was a choice we made. When we closed places of worship and kept Costco open, those were choices. But they had a consequence. Our small businesses are reeling from a whole set of after effects of those policies. I'll call them the lockdown policies. What's your view of the independent small business voice in the city and how you think that can get fixed, if you will, and the repairs to the main street and the vibrancy of those main streets can come about under a Furey-led Toronto?
Yeah, and I think it's the attitude, it's the awareness, and it's the priority of it. Because right now there's this sense that City Hall, big business, big corporations are calling the shots. The big business, they call, mayor answers the phone, they say, jump, how high? That's what they say. Whereas we need to flip that around, and we need to acknowledge the small businesses, the medium businesses. They are really the heartbeat of our communities, and we need to be more attentive to their needs. And I really want to prioritize that and just have the meetings, the conversations, and allow the small businesses to have more of an impact and more of a voice at City Hall, so we can be more responsive to all of them. And also, I know you and I have talked about this, but civic engagement more in terms of just getting people back to being a community, because we lost that, and it's sad. There's so many different cultural groups, faith groups who, they have a real vibrancy behind them, and we want to bring that back as much as possible. Just come together as neighbors, as family, as community.
And that's a theme, of course, of your running for mayor, is to who's in charge of the city, right?
Absolutely.
That was your kind of question in salvo. So who is in charge of the city?
No, it's a great conversation. I want to provoke a discussion in Toronto about who runs this town. Is it the lobbyists, the big corporations, the sort of weird activists who don't represent regular folks, who they just show up at City Hall kicking and screaming, and then City Hall caves to their demands. They only need to bring 10 people and they yell loud enough and they get what they want. But what about the regular folks? What about the parents, hardworking parents, people stuck in traffic, stuck on the highway all day, and the small and medium businesses? Like I said, their voice has to become the priority, not the special interest voices.
Yeah, it's funny. Before the pandemic, maybe some Torontonians and other Canadians might actually remember there was this big, seemingly campaign that Amazon had launched. Remember, they were going to build their second headquarters in North America, and every city across North America kept upping the ante of what they would give Amazon if they came. Amazon was going to bring 5,000 jobs.
Sure.
If you take 3 of Toronto's main streets, it's 5,000 plus jobs that every day are created by ordinary small business who don't get any of this sort of twisting and contortion to bring those businesses here. They're already here, and they're already providing valuable services and meeting the needs of the community at literally a street level.
Exactly. And you know what? I just heard from a restaurant owner who has a business in Columbus Center. It's an amazing facility that this gentleman has. And he was just telling me, and I did not know this, that the Summerlicious program is now charging people, small businesses, small restaurants, $500 to be listed on Summerlicious. They did Summerlicious for years. They didn't charge the restaurant owners the $500. All of a sudden, they create the $500. So to your point, you're giving millions of dollars to Amazon, even though one of the richest men in the world runs it. The small businesses, you're taking $500. You just created this $500 out of thin air. That's got to stop. I will retract that $500 for Summerlicious. Done. No more hosing the small businesses.
And just so that people understand, the Summerlicious program, I think, was an offshoot of something that was done in the States. Very popular for many years.
Good idea.
It did a lot to bring people out to restaurants, especially in the winter when it was called Winterlicious, right? An off season. But you're right, this idea that at some point it becomes an entitlement on the other side. It's like you forget who this program was designed for, as opposed, it's not designed to create revenue for the city to fund pet projects. It's to help small businesses, small restaurants, and the citizens to enjoy the kind of culinary arts and the vibrancy we have in the city. Right?
And that's the thing. I saw that some people in the media saying, oh, Furey won't be able to do the efficiencies review. We're going to have to raise taxes. No, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. What we do first is the efficiencies review. That's what you got to do. So the people are already saying, I'm going to raise taxes. I mean, have some respect for the hardworking folks that, no, your duty is to first go in and do the spring cleaning. Spring cleaning is not a thing. It's called spring cleaning for a reason. You do it once a year. You don't do it like every 10 years or every 20 years. Every year, you got to take a serious look and say, why are we doing this? Is this honoring the people, honoring the taxpayers?
Now, another area where maybe people have pushed back on you, Anthony, is that you, although you've covered politics, you've never been involved in politics. So how are you going to negotiate that? There's different levels of government. As you know, the city is the creation of a province. Province gets most of its funding from transfers that come from the federal government. How are you going to navigate that space?
It's a great point. And, you know, I'm very pleased to be an outsider. I'm proud to say that I am not a career politician, and people say a fresh perspective might be a nice thing. So I'm happy to be an outsider, but at the same time, I'm privileged to have gotten to know so many people over my years as a newspaper columnist, guy on radio, broadcaster. So it's about going to the experts like you, connecting with people who really understand their files. And that's how we know to get it done. And we're not captive to the old ways of doing things at City Hall. We can have fresh ideas, but we can still work with others. I'll be able to work with Premier Doug Ford just fine. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, maybe you disagree on some policy issues, but you work together for the betterment of Torontonians. I think we'll get along just fine to accomplish good results for Torontonians.
A kind of related issue. I want to bring this up because I think it's something you're cognizant of. To that point, you weren't a career politician. One thing we know with career politicians, and you just mentioned one of our current politicians, our prime minister. They're very careful about what they say.
Sure.
And even someone
Not me.
Exactly. And even someone who couldn't even scrub all of his past behind him knew how to react once certain past scandals came out. You, on the other hand, have everything in print.
I know.
I'm sure you have articles that caused some controversy when they came out. They can be brought back. Are you worried that so much of your past is public, in print? And how do you intend to sort of navigate that tricky subject?
Yeah, you know, Rafael, I appreciate the question, but I've written over 1,000 newspaper columns in my 15 years, National Post, Toronto Sun, and of the 1,000 of them, maybe you'll find 5 and you say, oh, why did you write these 5? They're not so great. And I go, okay, fine, they're not so great. Please read the other 990 and you'll go, hey, he's a pretty reasonable guy and he loves Canada, he loves Toronto. So I think people, they call it cancel culture, this idea that, you posted a thing on Facebook when you were in first year university, so now your son should never be able to get a job again in his life. I mean, people are done with that. So.
You're right. It's funny that this moment in history is probably the right time to be pushing back against the cancel culture agenda.
And to be clear, there's nothing really crazy. You're making it look like there's these horrendous things that I've done, and there's none of that.
No, the whole point is you were publishing in the mainstream press.
Right, yeah,
By definition, there are rules. I'm just saying there were controversial takes. Sure. Look at the pandemic. You were the only voice in the entire mainstream press, and you knew others that felt like you, thought like you, but they didn't cross the line to question school closures, question lockdowns, question passports, question mandates. These were just questions you always posed. What made you cross that line that other journalists didn't?
You know what? I was just looking at what was going on, and I was looking around the world at other countries, other jurisdictions, and Toronto did have some of the harshest lockdown conditions in the Western world, in the entire world. I think we should have looked to some other countries a bit more, other jurisdictions, and I think a lot of things, it just went a little bit too far. Somebody say, we're all going to disagree, and, we have these conversations, someone gets this booster or doesn't, or wears the mask or doesn't wear the mask. It's okay, whatever you want to do. But I think some of it, they were just pushing people a little bit too far. We should have given people a little bit more space.
Right, and that was your casting an eye wider than maybe everyone else who was looking even more inward, right? You pointed out, and you interviewed people from BC, our own country. The NDP government ran things very differently. They opened schools in June 2020, never closed them again. You pointed that out. Can you just speak to that, maybe this point? People think to run the city, you have to be knowledgeable, as you said, City Hall's intricacies, it's a complex bureaucracy. You're saying, well, hold on. It's the people that have been there the longest that have gotten into this mess. A fresh voice will do us good. How do you convince people that your knowledge of the greater world around you, you've worked in Ottawa, as you said, you bring an international and national perspective, how's that going to help Toronto and its problems?
Yeah, for sure. You got to go to the best voices, the experts. Like I said, I'm proud to be talking with you about small business policy when it comes to drug treatment. They're doing different things in different jurisdictions. I'm pleased to have the former Ottawa police chief advising, and they are doing interesting things in Ottawa about how to help the people with drugs, help with crime. I was speaking to someone very senior in the Alberta government the other day. They're doing a lot of stuff on drug treatment. So it's about, yes, looking at Toronto, and there's a lot of people at City Hall who are very knowledgeable, and I'm going to respect that and talk with them about all those issues. But you can go broader as well. And I've been privileged throughout my career to get to know people, all different issues, all around the country, all around the world. So it's about bringing the best minds together to accomplish good results for Toronto.
And maybe just a final point, and this is one that, in a conversation we had just prior to having this public interview, we spoke about the city and its diversity. So we talked about the city has its problems, looking abroad can get you solutions, but even within the city, we're quite different.
Yeah.
If you're growing up in North Etobicoke or East Scarborough or North York or the former city of York or East York, which was, I think, your stomping ground, those areas are quite unique and they have their own culture and history. How do you bring back that sense of neighborhood pride, that idea that a lot of these people feel isolated and alienated from downtown City Hall concerns? Where's the way in which an Anthony Furey mayoral candidacy and eventual, perhaps, mayoral tenure, how will it reinvigorate and invite these voices that are literally at the fringes of the city right now?
Well, and to your point, I'm going to have a map right in front of my desk of the city of Toronto. You say, well, what does that mean? Why? That's going to remind me. Downtown, you look at that map of the city of Toronto. Downtown, small part. Okay, great. Downtown's lovely. Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, the bulk of the city. And these communities matter. And downtown City Hall often forgets. They really only talk about St. Clair and South. Or Bloor and South.
Yeah, right.
They get further down there. And you've got to remember, we're all in this together, and diverse communities throughout the city. You can't forget the North, the East, the West, and too often they do. And it's about remembering everybody in this city.
Well, Anthony, I want to thank you for coming into TLN today.
Thank you for having me.
And getting a tour of Columbus Center and talking to people here in this community, which was part of the former city of North York.
Yeah.
I wish you all the best on your campaign. And keep the ideas coming.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here.
Thank you so much.